Philippa is titled today, "Can AI solve the climate crisis?" And I love the framing because it's it's playing playing the game that we have to play a little bit at this point in time. Um, but it's of course not inauthentic. There are many claims that certain types of socio-technical systems can aid us in transitioning away from uh, a global civilization that across the board, although we know that this is rather inequitable in terms of resource use and opportunities and all different types of things, but across the board is consuming far more than the planetary system can regenerate in a given cycle around the sun. And that's not good. That's a rather concerning trajectory. And I think we've had incredibly concrete evidence from that of that since, the let's say early 70s, thinking particularly the limits of growth work. Um, Now, what I wanted to do today, Veronica, is kind of get a little bit of footing established, reasonably firm footing, if we can. And perhaps start by defining a few different terms or exploring some terms that perhaps we've heard used so that we can carry that understanding forward for the rest of the discussion. And there's a few that sort of come to mind. One is green AI. Another is sort of like green software development, which has been around for a lot longer. And perhaps actually could we start there? Could we yeah, let's kind of start there, but before we get into maybe defining those core terms, uh, would really love a 1 to 2 to 3 minute just intro of your career and I suppose how you got to where you are now, the research areas that you're most interested in.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here today. And I am researching on AI since 2009 when I finished my degree. And well, I'm really passionate about AI, but it was back in 2019 when I read a paper that said that training one language model, not GPT, but I think it was BERT, I don't really remember, it consumed as much energy or CO2 or something like that as 5 cars in their lifetime. So I was shocked at that point because, of course, I was working on AI and I knew that maybe you run some experiments and you have to wait weeks or even a month and you need air conditioned because it's really hot. But I never thought that it could be bad for the environment. And at the same time, I was working on trying to modify some algorithms to work with less than 64 bits, right? So 64 bits is the normal thing that we have in our computers. So I was trying to adapt a particular type of algorithms to work with 8 or with 16 bits. My motivation at that point was, I don't know, imagine a smart earring or something like that. So it doesn't have 64 bits. So I want to adapt these algorithms to use less bits. But I realized that, for example, using less bits could be more energy efficient. So I started to research on this. And at that point, what we had was green software. And green software is more related to, well, as far as I know, because it's not my expertise, is more like programming in a more efficient way and these kind of things. But I couldn't see almost anything about green AI at that point. But I started to develop my new research line, which was okay, these particular algorithms that I am trying to use, I will see other other ways to make them more efficient. And then I saw this term green AI, which is uh, a new way of developing AI algorithms, but taking the energy consumption into account without losing so much accuracy on what you are doing. And this is the opposite as red AI, which is the AI we are used to, which is, okay, we are trying to get the best possible results using a lot of computing power. And sometimes we are, I don't know, just improving 0.00001. And we kept doing it because we have the resources. So why not? And well, since 2020 or something like that, I was researching on this green AI thing.
Thanks, Veronica. And okay, so one of the things that I think is interesting there is, as a computer scientist doing deeply technical work all throughout your academic career, it took a number of years. I think it was, did you say 10 years from when you finished your doctoral studies to when you started becoming really explicitly interested in this space, to figure out, oh, wow, the ICT systems that we're building, like, they have a big material impact. I'm wondering, when you awoke to that reality, a very different reality to the one we find ourselves in right now, did you share concern or interest with your colleagues? And what was the sort of ecological landscape like within academia and amongst your technical colleagues? Were they also interested? Were you seen as being like really fringe and excuse me, left of field? Like, what was that sort of sociologically like for you in the initial phase?
From my perspective, I have seen like different trends because I was lucky or unlucky, I don't know, but to live big changes on AI since I started to now, right? I mean, it's very exciting, but it's a lot of work because everything is changing all the time. So it's exhausting. But when I started working on AI, this was like the beginning of deep learning and things like that. So it was like, okay, we have a lot of data, we have a lot of computational power, and we can obtain like really, really good results, and that was good. But after some time, I started to see people concerning about the time. Like, okay, but this takes a lot of time. So maybe we can parallelize or things like that. So we reduce the time we have to wait. And I think now we are on a different era, which is like we are worried about efficiency and energy consumption, etc. But most of all, efficiency, because, well, there are some studies that say that, for example, reducing the time doesn't always correlate with reducing the energy consumption or emissions, etc. And what I saw when I started to research in this green AI topic was that, well, it's something that looks very good. So, for example, companies, like small companies, not the big tech, but small companies were very interested because I think it's like kind of good advertisement for them or something like that. And well, that's something that sometimes I don't like because I think it's not for the good reasons. And talking to my colleagues, it was like, oh, but we are trying to make these algorithms more efficient, but we didn't think that this was green AI. It was like, okay, we were doing this for some years, but we didn't realize that we were helping the environment or something like that. And well, then ChatGPT and all this stuff appeared, and it changed everything. But yeah, I decided to continue working on what I was doing, which is not generative AI. But I do think that we need to make advances anyway in other type of AI algorithms, because I don't know, from my university, which is a small university in northwest of Spain, I cannot compete, of course, with these big techs. But I can make my small difference, and I like researching on this. And well, since I said I'm not a big fan, I'm a big fan of. I'm not working on developing generative AI, but in a lot of algorithms that are used for different things, you can make a difference without losing accuracy or performance. And that's the good thing of academia, that we can try these things without worrying about the benefits of a company or something like that. And I am happy to do this. And well, one of the things that I like the most is to tell people about this, because of course I cannot change the generative AI algorithms that we are using, but if I can make that some people use ChatGPT or other chatbots with like being aware of the real cost of this, so that's a success for me.
Yeah, I think that gives us an opportunity to get into some interesting ground. So there is very obviously, very overtly, an obsession with general purpose AI systems, particularly sort of generative AI systems. Outrageous capital investment, outrageous speed to approximately $500 billion valuations, outrageous speed to over 1 billion users. Like there's some really very, and I'm gonna frame this in a values neutral way, although I'm not values neutral about it. Incredibly interesting dynamics over the last approximately 5 years, a little bit less. One of the things that we've seen during that period is all kinds of speculation about the role that this will play in our future, particularly the role that it might play in decarbonizing or creating efficiencies in our material supply chains, and there are many other proposals. Now, this is not my core area of expertise, so I want to approach this with a lot of humility. However, I've been very fortunate to continue learning a lot more about this. And as I've engaged in what you could almost think of as like applied ecological ethics relating to socio-technical systems, I don't think most of the claims that are being made stack up. And I just wanted to get a sense from you, Veronica, when you're looking at the literature on this, the academic literature on this, the scientific literature on this, is it starkly different from the rhetoric that we're hearing in news outlets and social media and the performative sort of blog posts that we get from corporations, etc.? And if so, how big is that difference? And what are the really meaningful differences that we should perhaps be paying closest attention to?
Yeah, actually, I defined green AI, but for me, there is another important term which is slightly different, which is green algorithms. And for me, green algorithms has two meanings. The first one is to develop algorithms that are more efficient. And the second one is to use AI algorithms to solve problems related to climate change. And this is something that we have seen a lot of times, like, okay, AI is not the bad guy because it can also help to solve these problems. And it's true. And there are plenty of examples in the literature of applying. I mean, usually it's predicting things, anticipating failures and things like that, or optimizing, which is something that AI has been good at it for a lot of years. Like, I don't know, a more efficient planning or agriculture, optimization of transportation routes, etc. But the point here, as you said, is that we have these claims like, okay, AI is okay, it consumes a lot of energy, but it helps. But it's not really like that, because the systems that are helping to solve climate change related problems are simpler models, that they are not most of the times generative AI models. So it's like generative AI is the kind of technology that is consuming a lot of energy, resources, water, and everything. And then the other AI that is actually helping the environment, it doesn't consume so much. And also, I have seen these claims also in other things that, and they it hurts a lot. But for example, it's like, okay, yes, but AI is helping to solve a lot of scientific problems, and to, I don't know, to cure diseases and these kind of things. And well, for example, we have AlphaFold or these huge models that, yeah, they consume energy, but it's not the same as the huge use that ChatGPT or these kind of things have. I mean, this is the real problem, not training an AlphaFold to help us understand the proteins of our bodies or to help the environment. So yeah, it's something I don't like. It's like a greenwashing or something like that, and people are not aware of that. And these big techs are trying to convince. I mean, I am pro AI. Let's be clear, because of course it's my area of research, and I think that it has a lot of benefits. And also generative AI, of course, it's a big revolution. It helps a lot. It makes us more productive. But what I feel is that most of the time we are using it for entertainment more than for productivity. And well, we need to be aware of its cost and everything that it implies. And we cannot just buy this narrative that, yes, we need these advances because we will cure cancer and we will solve all the scientific problems that we have. Well, no, not exactly. So we need people to be aware of this, and to distinguish these two things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure if everyone can see this, but right at the top of the chat, when it was just Philippa and Veronica and I posted a recent body of work that's been published by an investigative journalist, actually based here in Australia. He's a climate focused investigative journalist. And it sort of looks at the relationship between the current sort of evidentiary basis of these claims, whatever the claims may be, and the claims themselves, and how big is the gap. And that might be an interesting resource. Oh, thanks, Philippa. That might be an interesting resource for folks. I'm also thinking here, Veronica, that and Malcolm, of course, the claims don't stack up. It's about money. Yeah, there's perverse incentives. There's an AI arms race. It's a classic multipolar trap. And if you're familiar with that sort of systems parlance, then where we're at makes a heck of a lot of sense. But some interesting things that you were pointing to, Veronica, about the ways in which we direct our effort more purposefully. So we live everything that we know, perhaps maybe other than pi, we'll see. Little bit of a joke there, but everything is finite, right? Even the universe itself at some level. And so we live on this incredible planet where life has been evolving for approximately 4 billion years, the origins of which are still not particularly well understood, hotly debated. We are these incredible expressions of a 4 billion year evolutionary process. And if you look at the story of the universe as an evolutionary universe story, then let's call it 13.8 billion years, right? And we're doing these crazy things that have never been done before. And so we're both incredibly ordinary and incredibly extraordinary as a species. And so I don't want to get too much into that, because some of that we covered in the last session a little bit, but this really gets into a lot of my work, Veronica, in that I'm attempting to support organizations in different ways. I'm working in the public service at the moment, which is great in many ways, particularly because some of the incentive structures that we're talking about in the sort of paradigm of corporatism don't quite exist. But really, I'm trying to bring a philosophical underpinning to our AI strategy, AI investments, AI development, AI use. And that's really challenging for a lot of folks who aren't used to thinking that way. The sort of like meta principle in ethics is like the ought before can principle. You know, just because we can doesn't mean we should. And I think that's a big part of what you're saying here. So there are some potentially very valid use cases for AI, different types of AI, and we want to direct. It's like understand the problem space, understand its relative importance to the shared global condition / predicament, allocate resources in alignment to the things that kind of matter most, keep checks and balances in place to make sure the thing is kind of doing what it's supposed to. You know, it's like, this is very, very basic stuff, but things that we seem to be absolutely horrific at as a species. You know, one specific example is there's no broadly agreed definition of wisdom, but restraint is a common feature in most conceptions of wisdom. The ability to assess a context and go, oh, there's many possible options, and select an option that is kind of like overall good or helps you navigate the messy middle or whatever, but that's applying restraint. And I'm just wondering, so in this work that you're doing, so we're not seeing restraint applied basically anywhere, not at the levels that really matter. There's lots of great people around the world really trying to be the change that they seek, right? Like millions and millions of people. And it's so important to keep that in mind, because if you pay attention to the news, I don't have a TV, but you know, it's like, it's very easy to get caught up in a lot of stuff. And that's not to say it's not consequential, but just to keep in mind that there are so many kind, caring, passionate, compassionate, talented people around the world doing really incredible things. Like, from the research that you're doing, like if you had, let's just say you had I'm not sure, maybe it's not the UN, maybe it's Davos. You were able to go and present to the folks at Davos, some of the most powerful, influential people in the world. What would you want to make sure that they understood about AI's materiality, its impact on the planet, etc., and the things that we can definitely do differently? Like, what would you need them to understand if you had 30 minutes with them? Or maybe 3 minutes, because otherwise that's
No,
misaligned to our constraints today. Yeah. 3 minutes.
That's a difficult question, but I mean, this planet belongs to all of us. And yes, of course, there are big tech companies that can pay for all this electricity, energy, whatever, but this will have consequences for everyone. And well, we have to choose our words. We have to choose the use cases in which AI will be extremely powerful, but we cannot let these big tech companies do whatever they want and they can. Because, for example, the other day I heard something like the new version of ChatGPT, I don't know, 5.4 or something like that, was much more efficient than 5.3 or something like that, without losing performance. So, of course, this is good for the company because, well, they are losing a lot of money. But what they really want is that, oh, okay, so we can have more users. This is the Jevons paradox, you know. So okay, a technology can be more efficient, so we can have more users. And for example, I put this example like the lights, the bulb lights. Well, 20 or 30 years ago, they consume a lot of energy. So we have like one light bulb in one room, and now we have these LEDs, and we have a strip of a lot of LEDs, and at the end we pay the same for electricity, but we have more light. So it's kind of the same. These big tech companies are trying to make their models more efficient, but because they want to have more users, they want us to be addict to this, because now we need LLMs for everything. Even if you want to perform a single search on Google, you can't escape this AI power model. And I think more than being able to speak up in front of global leaders, what we need is the general public to understand this, because we need to be a lot of people worrying about this. And we have seen example like in some, I don't know, I think it was in the United States, in some, I don't know, in some part, because of having a data center, the people there had to pay more for electricity and things like that. What are we doing? I mean, this is crazy. There is no regulation about it. And I don't know, we are living this real time in testing. It's not even ready to, it didn't have passed some test or something like that, but we are, I don't know the word in English. Well, but we are the testers of this technology without thinking a lot about the consequences that we will have. And we will have these consequences in a lot of sectors, not only in the ecology or climate change, etc., but definitely products with less quality, maybe, and well, a lot of threats like loss of employment and these kind of things. So it's to be worried.
Yeah, yeah, it's a fascinating thing. Like there is a lot of, I noticed a new paper recently. I think I'll pop the link in a second, but Felix Kreutzig published quite a important paper. It was the lead author back in 2022 titled Digitalization and the Anthropocene. And it took a very wide boundary view on the effects of ICT systems since sort of their inception. I use it prolifically because it's sort of like a really grounding paper for me when I'm trying to empirically substantiate some of the things that people might think, because I'm a philosopher, I'm just sort of like moralizing or whatever. They don't quite, which is interesting. But this notion of everyday folks, like, just like on our devices or whatever, taking a bit of a stance. I noticed an article in the Guardian, maybe today or yesterday, talking about that very specifically. And I will try and dig that out and pop it in the chat in a moment as well, because I think there is a movement away from, and I'm going to refer to it as mindless adoption, but it's not actually that simple. There's so many different factors impacting the sort of causality of adoption that I don't want to present an idea that's actually disrespectful and misses a lot of that nuance. But just for the sake of simplicity, referring to it as mindless adoption and sort of like usage of these technologies. And like, if, I will jump to questions in just a second. I know that there's a bunch of good stuff in here, but if you were to sit down with, say, a representative sample of just like 100 folks in your bioregion, Veronica, and you had some time to just say, hey, here's what I think you should be thinking about in relation to AI. Here's how maybe you should or shouldn't be using it. Like, what messages would you share with them?
You mean with regular people?
Yeah, just that,
Yeah.
and genuinely diverse group of folks that
Yeah.
that come from all different walks of life, educational backgrounds, ideological sort of positions, the works. Yeah.
Yeah, what I typically say is that, for example, we should try to use um, the simplest model first. And well, I saw that in the chat someone said that you can opt out for this Google AI search, but most people just don't do that. Just stays with comes by default. But for example, I don't know. You need to write an email, you can do it yourself. You don't need ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, to write it for you. And okay, it's like choose the choosing the right use cases because and well, this applies also when I talk to developers because I've seen this since the beginning of deep learning because deep learning was the new kid on the block. Everyone was wanted to apply deep learning to any possible problem. And sometimes deep learning requires more computation than traditional AI models. But sometimes you don't need it because you have simpler models that can solve the problem. And usually they are more understandable and transparent, etc. So try simpler first, and maybe it works, so you don't need more. And well, that's one thing. The other thing is be aware of the cost. Maybe we need some kind of labels or something like when you search for flights. I mean, some people wouldn't care, but others they do. And at least you are aware of this consumption because every time there is a new trend of converting images to, I don't know, Studio Ghibli or whatever thing it is, or Disney princesses, whatever, sometimes it looks like it's not enough to create one picture. You need to try with 5 or 6. Okay, I understand making things for fun, of course. I can do it too. But you need to be aware that this has a cost. And just raise the voice for this, talk to people about this problem that we will have. And what I really think is that in some years we will have to pay for this because this won't be for free for so long. And when imagine that you have like, I don't know, a budget of 100, I know, 1,000 tokens, whatever. So people will have to think about what to do with them, and maybe we could have a more, I know, more like being aware of this cost, because when we don't pay for something, we don't really care, and this has a cost. Actually, big techs are losing a lot of money until we have all of us addicted, and then we will pay, like it happened with Netflix and these kind of platforms. It's the same, I suppose, it's the same kind of strategy. And well, but I think the problem is that most people just don't know about this because, as I said, I give a lot of talks about this to general public. And always at the end of each talk, people come and say, wow, I didn't know this. Now I'm very worried. I don't want to use AI. And I am like, no, it's not this. You can use AI, but for important things, not for stupid things. And just being aware is the most important things. It is the most important thing. And well, there's not much to do for regular people. I mean, they can raise the voice, for example, for not putting big data centers in areas that, I don't know, already have problems with water or something like that. But it's just an individual responsibility, because yes, you can think, I am only a person, my energy consumption is just like this. Yes, but we are millions of users of this, so every little gesture counts.